It is official. The BYU Cougars are honoring the 1996 BYU football team this fall by wearing throwback uniforms from that 1996 season. Are they tempting the football gods by doing something that Lavelle Edwards himself swore he'd never do? We're talking about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you who we like to call everydayers right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars, and today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Of course, with the summer here, there's not as many sports going on, but the best part is FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every single day, all summer long. Get on it today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started right away. All right, let's dive right in on today's show. We talked about it yesterday. I had a strong suspicion that BYU would be revealing the 1996 era throwback uniforms as part of their 100 years of BYU football celebration this fall. There's going to be a number of other celebrations happening, including commemorating the 40-year anniversary of BYU's national championship team, the 50-year anniversary of BYU's first bowl team when they take on Oklahoma State. There's a number of different things going on, but this is the only one that I am aware of at the current time that BYU will don throwback uniforms, and they will do that on their September 21st Big 12 opener against their opponent in the 1997 Cotton Bowl, the Kansas State Wildcats. Now, it's obviously cool to see that happen, and all these years later to have that team being honored. They went 14-1. They're one of the best single teams in BYU football history. I would put them behind the 1984 national championship team, but just barely behind them. I think that team, had they been given the same opportunity, the same level playing field, it felt like that the 1980s offered in college football. I'm telling you, that 1996 squad could have hung with the best of them, but they capped off that season with an impressive win over Kansas State, and it's really cool to see those two teams getting back together and BYU donning those uniforms. My only problem is BYU is going to wear the white-on-white combination. You mentioned that BYU went 14-1 in that season, Jake. Well, what's the concern that you have? My concern is that when BYU lost their lone game that season at Washington early on in the season, Lavelle Edwards said after that game, and I'm not gonna have it verbatim on the quote, but essentially he feared that going into that game, his team was more worried about how they looked versus how they were going to play, and they got beat by the Washington Huskies. Obviously, it scuttled a potential run maybe at a national championship later on that season with the Bowl Alliance and a whole other situation involved in that. But Lavelle Edwards swore that they would never wear the white-on-white combination again that season, and they did not do that. BYU finished up the season in that Cotton Bowl wearing the royal blue uniforms. They wore the white pants that BYU will don in this game, but they wore the royal blue uniforms. And for the life of me, I can't understand why BYU wouldn't resurrect the royal blue uniforms from that era. The white uniforms are great. The drop, the look of them on both sides, both royal and blue, it's an incredible look to me. But come on now. It's all about wearing the royal blue. Wear your home colors at home. I know that BYU likes to have themes for all of these games. They want to have a whiteout game. Let's cut to the chase. BYU's not Penn State. The whiteout for BYU, it is what it is. I'm in favor of it. And if you're going to honor this team from 1996, why are you wearing the very uniform combination that the late, great Lavelle Edwards swore that his team would never wear ever again? You're tempting the football gods. Now, it's already tough enough to consider that the Kansas State Wildcats are going to be one of maybe the best teams in the Big 12. They could contend for Big 12 supremacy this fall, and it's going to be obviously a tough game for BYU to win that one in the Big 12 opener. But I just don't like tempting fate when it comes to wearing those white-on-white uniforms. Now, conversely, you obviously could argue, well, they're going to excise some of those demons, Jake, by wearing those uniforms if they do beat Kansas State. Maybe they do. The other thing about this is, if you're going to wear throwback uniforms, wear more than one game. I love the fact that when BYU played in the New Mexico Bowl just a couple of years ago, I was down there in Albuquerque, BYU was wearing those blackout uniforms they had worn earlier on in the season. Bring them back around. Don't make it just a true one-off. Yes, there'll be fan merchandise that's going to be a one-off. At least I'm hoping that they're going to have fan merchandise to celebrate. That drop shadow look is an iconic iconic look of the 90s, and more particularly for BYU football of that era. And I hope there's fan gear that can be had. But the bigger point to be made here is I wish BYU would wear them more often than just having them for a one-off. Now, there's probably some contract issues that would pop up with that with regards to the contracts they have with Nike and being able to wear those uniforms more than once, maybe outside of the specialty of it being a bowl game. But I just would have liked to seen them wear the royal blue uniforms at home under the lights at LaVell Edwards Stadium, as I am anticipating that game being a late night kickoff at LES. But it's going to be a white on white, and it's going to be a whiteout inside LaVell Edwards Stadium. So get ready for that. Now, the other thing about this is thinking about and looking at those uniforms, and it dredged up all kinds of memories. Some of you may know my backstory when it comes to my association with BYU, but if you want one single person, you want to point to one single person in my life as to why I do what I do, and that is doing sports radio. I always wanted to be in sports for my career. Now doing this podcast for going on 6 years at this point. The single person that you can point to quote unquote blame for all of this is my grandfather, Herman. Now, he turned 90 years old earlier this year, and he is one of my closest confidants to this very day. And man, I'm already getting emotional about this. He took me to more than my fair share of my early years of going to BYU football games. In that 1996 season, it's the first game I remember vividly going to was the kickoff classic against Texas A&M. I can tell you, my grandpa picked me up from my parents' house in Orem, Utah. We drove in as a Isuzu Trooper, drove down to LES, parked in that sliver parking lot. I guess it's the one just to the southeast of the stadium. Parked there. I don't know why we parked there, considering his seats for all the work he did, by the way. He was an optometrist in Provo for decades, and he worked with BYU athletics very closely. I'm not sure if it was a truly official capacity, but in an unofficial capacity, I always called him BYU's team eye doctor. He dealt with numerous BYU athletes, coaches, and administrators over the years. Some of the greats like Tresimir Chosic, he's got great memories of working with those athletes. But think about this 1996 team those were the early years of me going to BYU games. I, like many of you out there watching and or listening to this, were roped into BYU because of that 1996 season. There are teams in every program's history that create legions of fans, and they seem to come around once every generation, it feels like. I think the current generation, quite frankly, has been roped in from the 2020 season, that COVID-ravaged year where BYU was making all kinds of headlines with Zach Wilson at quarterback, the anytime, anywhere, any place shenanigans, all of that. Well, for my era, my generation, as it was, it's 1996. There's a generation before me, it's 1984. There's a generation before that, it's probably 1974 in the early years of LaVell Edwards. But every generation of BYU fans has one of those seasons. And getting back to my grandpa, I'm the oldest of 7 kids. So the idea that my dad at that point in his career was going to be able to take a lot of time and take time away from the rest of the family to take me to an individual ball game, it wasn't all that feasible. My grandpa, on the other hand, he loved it. We had great times together. I spent, if I wasn't at LaVell Edwards Stadium watching a BYU game with him for multiple years there in the mid to late 90s, I was usually in his basement in Orem watching wherever BYU was playing on TV because he had cable. So my grandpa means the world to me because he's my last living grandparent. And man, don't mean to get this emotional about this, but the thing about it is he's 90 years old and he's starting to show his age. He's got some memory issues. And the funny thing is, when we talk BYU sports, there's no memory issues. It goes away in an instant. So it's kind of ironic that this 1996 announcement dredged up all of these memories that I didn't anticipate talking about on today's show. I didn't anticipate bawling in front of thousands of you while talking about my grandpa. He's probably going to be embarrassed that his grandson's talking about him in this manner. But the bigger point to be made here is that it means the world to me to watch that era of BYU football because it really has some of the, most precious memories to me of spending time with my grandpa. Obviously, I'm still close to him. He's still alive. Like I said, he turned 90 earlier this year, and it's like old times when we talk BYU sports. It's just, it throws me back to being a 9-year-old walking into LaVell Edwards Stadium on just a sweltering August day when BYU took on Texas A&M. Excuse me. In that kickoff classic. It was absolutely miserably hot, but we sat there, watched that game unfold, and I was roped into that point. I was already sports obsessed, even as a youngster at that age, but that essentially sealed it for me. The BYU was my team, and they've been my team for decades since. My relationship with BYU has changed since then. I cover them on a professional basis at this point. So it's a different feeling now when I cover the Cougars. I'm looking at it far more objectively, I feel like, than I did previously to getting in the media over the past decade and a half that I've been doing this. But it's kind of funny how a singular uniform that BYU announced dredged up some just incredible memories of that era for me, and obviously spending time with my grandfather that, quite honestly, I will never forget. And like I said, he's still around. We still talk often about BYU sports, and it's a gift. It is truly a gift to still have him around and still be able to kind of talk about it. And I haven't had a chance to talk to him quite yet about the fact that BYU is going to wear those throwback uniforms, but I'm telling you, he's going to snap right back to that era, and we're probably going to talk about going to that Texas A&M game and going to TCU later that season, and him pointing out, and he had seats right there on the 50-yard line. It was, I guess, the way the BYU comped him in some small part for all the work he did in the optometry field for them, is we sat right on the 50-yard line in those chair seats on the west side of the LaVell Edwards Stadium. I was absolutely I was spoiled as a kid, honestly. Thinking back on it, but he pointed out LaDainian Tomlinson from me, not just 10 feet away, and said, that guy's going to be a star in the NFL one day. And obviously we all know that what LT ended up becoming in the NFL. So it's kind of funny how stuff like this can affect your mood, your thoughts, your memories. But it's really cool to see BYU football paying homage to one of the great teams in their football history. And at the same time, allowing me to jump back 30 some odd years, it feels like, and think about what was way back when it came to BYU. So just wanted to kind of share that. There's both good and bad with this. And like I said, I don't want them to bring bad juju on the program by tempting the football gods and going against what the great LaVell Edwards said. But the other thing about it is it'll be really, really cool to see that team back on LaVell Edwards Stadium turf, and obviously be honoring them. And it's a really, really poignant thing to me. And thank you for kind of indulging me as I dug into that and kind of talked through my emotions of it all. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we're going to talk about BYU football. Now, the bigger thing is it brings us to the modern day. BYU got another commitment just yesterday, kicking off July in fine fashion, another high-level athlete committing, and this one comes from BYU's quite literal backyard out of Timpview High School. Who is Taani Makasini? We're going to talk about that next as you roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Thank you once again for being Locked On Cougars, your first listen today. I want to remind you guys that FanDuel is bringing us today's show. Of course, all of us love sports, and I love them probably more than most, I would say myself. But the best part is I love them so much, I never want them to stop. That's what I do on my daily basis with my day job. It's nonstop. It's sports talk radio. We're always talking about the latest and greatest when it comes to sports topics. But this part is, during the summer, it seems to slow down a little bit. But FanDuel is here to help you guys out. They're hooking up all customers all season long, excuse me, if I can get those words out of my mouth. They have a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer with our friends at FanDuel. They have over under of 4.5 wins for BYU football this upcoming football season. You think the Cougars got a special season and they're going to get back to the bowl season? Well, place your bet on that now. If you think BYU basketball is going to get over the hump year one with Kevin Young, you got 55-1 odds from our friends at FanDuel. So take advantage of the offers today and go to FanDuel.com/locked and make the most out of your summer once again. And if you're into Major League Baseball and you're going around the country watching baseball games, we got that for you guys too. It's all available now. It's all courtesy of your friends at FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of your guys' support. Are you sick of watching the talking heads on ESPN or Fox Sports and having to turn on the volume because they continue to kind of bloviate on and on? Well, I want you guys to make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you all day long with all the biggest stories when it comes to sports without all of the shouting. The embrace debate folks are not existing on Locked On. The best part is you can check it out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. It's also available on the Free Fire TV channels app as well on Amazon Fire TV. So Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league as well. So find Locked On Sports Today available now on YouTube and also the free Amazon Fire TV channels app right away. All right, BYU football got another big commitment over the, overnight, I guess I should say, as BYU received the commitment from Timpview linebacker Taani Makasini. Now, Taani Makasini, that last name should sound familiar because his brother Sonny is already a member of the BYU football program. Sonny is on his way, I feel like, to being an emerging force for BYU on the offensive line. Well, Taani is not an offensive lineman. He is not following in his brother's footsteps. He's a linebacker for Timpview High School and a very, very good one at that. I think a number of you know that I cover high school sports, in particular high school football, to a very large degree for the KSL Sports Rewind crew, and I'm out calling games all the time. And I love to watch highlight reels of guys on these local programs, get to know them a little bit better. What I like about Taani Makasini is he shows all the skills you want in a next level linebacker. He shows exactly what BYU hopes their linebackers can be. Now, he will have to gain some weight. He's listed at 6'2", 200 pounds currently. So obviously a little bit skinny for a linebacker at the power 4 level. But the thing about it is, yet again, BYU is getting an upper tier 3-star talent, an 87 rating from our friends over at 24/7 Sports. His composite rating, a shade under that at 86.28, but it puts him as the number 9 recruit in the state of Utah. BYU football is on a little bit of a heater right now with regards to commitments in this program. Yes, the vast majority of them are 3-star talents. The only one that is a 4-star talent currently is LaMason Waller. Of the 8 they've committed in the past, I'd say 2 weeks and change. But the nice part is they have a number of these guys, and if you go by the 24/7 Sports rating system, anything above an 86, it's considered to be a power 4 contributor at minimum. And if you're an 87 pushing to like an 88, which some of these guys like a Makasini are, you're considered to be a guy that at some point in your career as a power 4 level player, you're expected to be a starting caliber player for the BYU football program in this circumstance. It's speaking of Taani Makasini. Watching his highlight reel, he harkens back to some of the good, not good, great linebackers in recent past for BYU football. You see shades of guys like Kalani Fua in him. You see something that you say, oh, that's a Fred Warner type play. Remember, Fred Warner is now the premier middle linebacker in the NFL, but when he was at BYU, he was a pseudo safety, playing kind of outside linebacker for BYU, doing a bevy of different things. And that's what Taani Makasini flashes. He's not the biggest linebacker, like I said, 6'2", 200 pounds. He's going to have to gain some weight to contribute. But you watch his skill set, and it's very clear why BYU wanted him in this program. The best part is, like many of these other recruits that BYU's brought in of late, he's got other power 4 level offers. Cal, Oregon State, the big dogs, speaking of Tennessee and Utah, also in the mix here, that had offers out to Makasini. But the nice part is the Makasini family is going to be a BYU family, it appears. And the other thing about it is, as I look at what Taani offers, he is a big commit coming to BYU, a stone's throw away at Timpview High School, because you literally can drive from BYU campus to Timpview's campus in 2 minutes if you hit the lights right, it feels like. But I really like this pickup for BYU. It continues their strong run when it comes to commitments of late, and it's really filling in a nice recruiting class for BYU. Is it going to be the star-studded class that I think last year's was? We'll have to wait and see, because there's still months to go on this, but right now, it's tracking along those same lines for BYU. The bigger point to be able to surpass last year's recruiting class for BYU will be able to get more headliners, more 4-star talents that'll commit to BYU. Remember, they got Faletau Satuala late in last year's recruiting cycle, among others, and bona fide 4-star talent that everybody and their dog wanted. You need to get some of those guys to headline this class. But right now, the framework of this recruiting cycle for BYU is solid, if not spectacular, for Kalani Sitake and the BYU Cougars. I absolutely love what they have done. They have filled gaps and needs with guys, and I don't know what Makasini, if he has mission plans, are currently, but even if he does have plans to go on a mission right away, the nice part is BYU set up for both the near and long-term future of this program with talent that's coming in. And the biggest thing about BYU in the Power Four is showing that they can recruit against their fellow Power Four opposition. The nice part is I think every one of these commitments in the last, like I said, 2 weeks and change, there's 8 in all, coming off of 14 a week, 2 weeks ago, where BYU had 18 official visits, 4 of them early in the week, and then 14 on the weekend. To converted out of those 18 official visits and change, to have 8 commitments coming out of it, that's a very, very nice conversion percentage for BYU. And that obviously indicates that BYU has got something to sell, and they're doing a very good job at, as they always say, ABC, always be closing. When it comes to recruiting, when it comes to business, it applies in all features. And I just want to say big ups to Taani Makasini, and hopefully the Makasini family is going to have a very strong run here in the near future. Because like I said, I think Sonny, if it's not this year, I think next year is his time to really step to the forefront and become a starting caliber offensive lineman for BYU. And whenever Taani shows up at BYU, I would say in the first year or two of his BYU career, I could very easily see him as a starting caliber player for BYU's defense under Jay Hill at that point. So really cool to see this. And yet again, tip of the cap to Justin Enna, Jay Hill, Kalani Sitake, all the defensive coaches that were in the mix on this one in bringing in Taani Makasini to the BYU football family. All right, we will finish up today's show with a look at the 5 BYU players that are headed to next week's Big 12 Media Days. One omission that I think is glaring, we'll talk about that, but also I think all 5 of the guys who are going to go are very much deserving of the honor, and we'll dig into that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Want to encourage you guys, if you've not done so already, please sign up for our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It's a great way to get insider tidbits I'm passing along to our group all the time. And the best part is you're not having to go to a message board, have to search out for the information you're seeking. It comes to your phone quite literally in the form of a text message. It does not get much more direct than that. And the best part is you can fire back with text messages of your own. You can have one-on-one conversations. It's a really, really fun feature we've added in the past, I'd say 6 months and change here on Locked On Cougars, and it's going to be a big part of what we do moving forward. So if you want to be a part of it today, click the link in the show notes below, whether you're watching and or listening to this, and join us on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group and get the inside scoop of everything I'm hearing about BYU. All right, let's talk about BYU and Big 12 Media Days. Now, as it stands right now, I originally had plans months and months ago when BYU was set to go to Las Vegas for Big 12 Media Days that I was going to make the trek to Las Vegas to be part of it. I made the trip last year to Arlington and had a great time at AT&T Stadium. I was able to hobnob and network with a number of Big 12 officials, coaches, players, other media members. But as things stand right now, due to some, let's see, things out of my control with regards to my day job at the KSL Sports Zone, I will not be making the trip as of now. Could that change? Yes, it could. But I am probably going to miss out on this year's Big 12 Media Day, and it bums me out because looking at it, BYU's got a really, really fun crew of guys headed down to Las Vegas to participate in this. Now, last year, BYU took a number of players down there for the first ever Big 12 Media Day experience. Well, only one returning player will make that second trip, and that is Tyler Batty. He is headlining the 5-player group for BYU that's making the trek to Las Vegas. He'll be joined by offensive lineman Connor Pay, our guy. Connor is making the trip to Las Vegas, very much deserved. Cornerback Jakob Robinson, and then wide receivers Chase Roberts and Darius Lassiter will be the 5 BYU players that will be representing BYU in Las Vegas. I think all 5 of them have a really, really cool story to tell. Obviously, a guy like Connor Pay is going to become a very quick media favorite, media darling, because he doesn't pull punches. Any of you who have watched this podcast when Connor's been on the show know that he does not couch anything. He says it how it is, how he perceives it, and lets the bygones be bygones at that point. If people want to get upset about it, great. If they want to praise him for it, great. He frankly doesn't give a you-know-what, my dear, to use that famous line from all those years ago in Hollywood. But the other thing about it is it's cool to see these guys getting their opportunity to go out and be part of this. Now, the other thing about this is a little bit of an upset. Totino's is sponsoring Big 12 Media Days. Old Trapper Beef Jerky had sponsored it last year. Let's just put it this way. Old Trapper Beef Jerky had just bin upon bin of beef jerky for the media to enjoy. I brought home conservatively maybe 10 bags of beef jerky from last year's Media Days. I'm not sure what Totino's is going to do. They're going to have bags of frozen pizza rolls. Are they going to have that for the media? They're going to have those the pizzas, the famous four little what do they call them? The rectangles. Maybe they are, but hey, you're going to have to keep those cool somehow if you're going to travel with those. But nonetheless, really cool to see this happening, and congratulations to the 5 players attending. I am surprised, though, mildly, that Ben Bywater, who made the trip last year, had a great conversation with him down there in Arlington. One of the more effervescent personalities on the BYU football program. He is not making the trip to Las Vegas. Is that an omission on purpose by BYU? I wouldn't imagine so, but just an interesting one, because Ben was one of the guys returning this year that obviously when you make the trip to Arlington last year, much like Tyler Batty, I would have thought that Ben was set to reprise his role as one of BYU's representatives at Big 12 Media Days, but they opted to go another direction. So overall, a big congratulations to Tyler Batty, Connor Pay, Jakob Robinson, Darius Lassiter, and Chase Roberts. I have no doubt they will represent BYU absolutely just incredibly well. And the other thing is Kalani Sitake. I can tell you, he became a media favorite last year. If he wasn't already amongst Big 12 folks, he cemented that last year in Arlington because he spent hours, I'm talking hours after other coaches, players, his own players had already left the building. He was still doing media availabilities with whoever wanted to talk to him. I can never fault Kalani Sitake for his being willing to talk to the media. I absolutely admire his openness to talking with the media. So we will see how it goes at Big 12 Media Day. I'll be covering it remotely, it appears, this year, and it's a disappointment for me personally, but hey, it is what it is, and we'll have plenty of coverage for you guys. And I've already talked to Connor. He's going to come on with us after Big 12 Media Days and recap it all for us. We'll get the good, the bad, and the ugly from Connor Pay's perspective of Big 12 Media Days. And I'll just put it this way. I cannot wait to hear what Connor's evaluation of his experience in Las Vegas is. It's also going to be extremely hot. 116 on Tuesday, 117 on Wednesday, the current forecast for Las Vegas. So if you're going to Vegas for Big 12 Media Days, if you're a fellow media member out there, hydrate, and start right now. All right. That's enough for today. I have cried, I have laughed, I have been everywhere in between. So thank you for bearing with me. That was a fun episode. Quite honestly, it was a really, really fun episode. Like I said, I'm probably going to get chided by my grandfather for showing weakness and crying on my podcast. But hey, I'm an emotional dude, and you can blame my dad and also my grandfather for those emotions. But alas, thank you as always for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you who like to call everydayers as well, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And until tomorrow, my friends, have a great day. This has been the Locked On Cougars podcast.